Hopefully this is gonna stay up here balanced precariously on my sewing machine. Hello, FlossTube friends. My name is Caitlin, and this is my little corner of YouTube where I talk about my cross stitch and sometimes sewing and knitting sprinkled in and other crafty things. I apologize for the wet hair and slightly disheveled appearance. My husband took the toddler, our tiny dictator, to the park, and I have a brief window here to film a little video where I am not locked in our bedroom. Did you know that city parks open at dawn? They open at dawn. Ask me how I know. Ask me how I know. I'm so tired. Today is July 17th, and I am checking in to let you know how I fared during the month of March, April, May, June, and half of July. 5 months. What happened there? I meant to film every month this year, but then I didn't get my February video out until like halfway through March. So I was like, oh, I'll skip March and just do an April update. And then in April, we found out I'm pregnant with our second child, and we found out in April. It's another girl, and we are so excited, beyond excited. 2 girls, it's gonna be so great. Although I know what you're thinking. Elephant in the room here would have been much more practical for my husband to impregnate me with a gun or a Christian high school football coach. Those things have more rights than people with people who can get pregnant in the United States. I'm learning. There, did that clear out most of the Republicans? Don't pull a muscle hitting unsubscribe too fast. I'm in a mood this morning, can you tell? Anyway, found out in April that we were pregnant, super exciting, another girl, but I had debilitating morning sickness for like 7 or 8 weeks. They say the second child hits you harder, and man, I could do pretty much nothing but lie still, trying not to throw up. And my husband, if you're new here, we both work in film and TV, and we take turns working, and then one of us works on a show and the other one watches our toddler. And currently I'm home and he's working, but he's working on a very difficult show with that films mostly at night. And he's also going through some health stuff of his own. And so basically anytime one of us was home for the entire spring, anytime both of us were home for the entire spring, one of us was sleeping or just feeling completely miserable, and the other one was watching our toddler. So there was like hardly a moment to craft or stitch or do anything in general, let alone film a floss tube. I just realized that my plants up there, Jenna, don't look, they're dying. They're like dead, don't look. Okay, so that's my long explanation for where I've been. But I have been doing some crafting. I'm looking down, I have notes here because there's like 5 months of stuff to tell you about, so that's what I'm looking down at. I have been doing some crafting, so I do have some things to share. And as I said, I have a currently brief free moment, so let's get into it. First of all, purchases, none. If you're new here, I'm doing Nothing New 2022, which is where I'm trying not to buy any craft supplies for the whole year, with the exception of quilt batting, if I need it for a specific project, because I don't have a stash of that. Sewing thread, if it's needed, so far has not been, and needles, if needed, both for my sewing machine or cross stitch if needed. So far, again, have not needed to. Have been able to get by 7 months, 6.5 months, 7 months of the year without needing to purchase anything. So it's going really well. I actually had a nightmare that I purchased a bunch of fabric on Etsy and it showed up and it was like really horrible quality and terrible. And I was like, oh my God, I threw away Nothing New 2022 for this horrible, ugly orange and green and brown fabric. And it's nothing like the picture and I totally ruined it. What a horrible nightmare that was. But it was just a nightmare. Nothing New 2022 remains intact. I have not purchased any crafting supplies. And you know what? I don't feel like I've had any FOMO. Like, there is literally one, maybe two charts that I think I will buy next year. And those are the Van Goats that Brittany from Ingleside Imaginarium, I'll link them below, she did. They're super cute. I think that those are the only things I've seen and been like, ooh, I want to buy that right now. But they'll be available next year, so I can wait, so it's okay. I'm not having a lot of FOMO. I'm not really feeling like, God, like tempted to buy anything. I'm honestly, like, I'm realizing doing this that I am not working through my stash fast enough to need to buy anything. It hasn't really been like a great year for crafting, but it's like kind of been like a reality check. Like, I literally cannot knit as fast as I shop, and I'm really seeing that by not allowing myself to buy anything, and not constantly adding things to my stash. I did purchase some fully finished craft items from the Mr. Domestic Abortion fundraiser. There was so many great things on there. So many great fully finished items, and then like kits and craft supplies. It was like, there was something for everyone. So if you missed it, I'm sorry, but it was a really great fundraiser. I purchased a beautiful crib size quilt that I'm really excited about. And some fabric earrings, and when they come, hopefully in a couple weeks, I will show them to you, because I am really excited to get my hands on them. Okay, so that's it for purchases, and now we'll go into finishes. So we are a year and a half in, and I have just one finish, only one finish. Oh, woof. I know. It's just, most of my whips are too big, right? And I'm too slow, but I do have one finish, and I'm going to turn you around now and share it with you in detail. This is Miss Chessie's Tuff It by Chessie and Me. I don't know if this chart is still available. I purchased it in a D-Stash sale some time ago. It's a Biscornu and scissor fob. So as you can see, the chart, it charts it for a calico cat. However, I had this really beautiful teal fabric from Color and Cotton. I got it in one of their subscription boxes, their monthly fabric box, 4 years ago, and I do not recall what it's called, and I lost the tag. But it's probably not available anyway, because I think she's dyeing different colors now than she was 4 years ago. But it was this really beautiful teal fabric, and I love orange and teal and white together. So I decided to rechart for an orange cat. And I think it turned out really well. For the cat, I used 712 for his tummy. And then the orange was DMC 977 and 3826. And then the border and the Biscornu motifs were all done in DMC Blanc, because you need about 3 skeins of whatever color you use for the Biscornu and the border in order to, and the cording, in order to do this chart. And that was the color I had enough skeins of in my stash without having to buy any more. So that's why I chose this color. Also, I don't have a cording drill, so I'll put a clip in here. I used like this gear toy of my daughter's to do the cording for this scissor fob, and I think it turned out really well, because I can't buy a cording drill because nothing new 2022. And also, like, I mean, I suppose I could have done it with a pencil, but it was pretty fun. So this is all done, and this is going to be my smalls exchange piece at the Floss Tube Retreat, which is happening this coming weekend. I'm excited to give them away. Okay, that's it for finishes. So let's talk about whips. I think I've showed this to you before, but I've had some progress on it since then. This is Bendy Stitchy's Drama Llama sampler, And as I've mentioned, I think in my last video, I'm doing this as a companion piece to Kingsland's Learned Wife sampler, and doing like a mirror of the colors. So instead of beige fabric with blue stitching, I'm doing blue fabric with some like brownie green stitching. This is Weeks Dye Works Water Lily. I think it's called, no, it's Newcastle Water Green, but it's more teal than green. And I am using Color and Cotton pine needles for the border up here. And the alphabet I've started in Maritime, also by Color and Cotton. So that's what I've gotten done so far. I think I've gotten like about another 700 stitches in since I've showed this to you the last time, mostly border and a start on this alphabet. This is a really enjoyable stitch, but it is 40 count. Yeah, I'm looking forward to having this back out. I've been stitching in hand because the fabric is so thick. It's fine for that. The next thing I pulled out was my Heaven and Earth Designs chart. I own more than one Haid, because don't we all? But this is the only one I've started because it turns out I don't really love full coverage that much, and I'm really slow at full coverage stitching, so I don't know if I'll ever even get to the other ones, but I'm certainly not going to start them until I finish this guy. This chart isn't even that big, 340 by 434, compared to some other charts. I think this is more of a medium size. I forget what I'm stitching this on. This is like, it's a 28 count Lugana by Zweigart. I'm stitching it 1/1. I pulled this out in April because I needed to work on it at least once this year, and April is Jessie Marie's birthday month, and she of course is the queen of Heaven and Earth Designs and full coverage projects. So I think the last time you saw it, I just had a little bit of a start on this page here, and I got about, this is the page line for the second page, I got about 500 stitches done on this page here. It doesn't really look like much, right? Which is kind of what I struggle with full coverage, that you can work hours and hours and like only get a piece of hair. I started this in 2017. It was my new year, new start, and it has really been languishing my whip pile since then. I've gone a few years without working on it at all. So I'm glad I got this out this year. We'll see if I touch it again before December. Next up, I did a little bit of work on my Long Dog samplers, Froth and Bubble. I started this in 2020 in February, right before COVID. As part of my, I decided to join in on the, was it Erin Two Martini Stitcher? I think she started the Long Dog leap year sal, which is like to start a Long Dog in 2020 and have it finished before the next leap year, which is February 2024. As of right now, that's not looking likely. This is like maybe 20% finished. I have one page out of 6, but the last 2 pages are not full pages. So yeah, since I last saw you, I've gotten like 1,000 stitches done in this, mostly coloring in these flowers up here, and a lot of border. This is 1/2 on 40 count. I want to say this is like Pearl Gray by Zweigart. If you really want to know, I'll let you know. I'm using the Called For DMC, and they are just beautiful. Perfection. I love this one so much, I want to take it back out also. Man, I just have too many whips I love. So for May, my intention was to do a monogamous mania, and I did keep it monogamous, but as I mentioned, I was not feeling well in May, so I did not really get a whole lot of work done. I had a lot of days where I couldn't stitch at all. So you've seen this before this year. This is Jeanette Douglas Isle of Hope sampler, which is an Ellis Island sampler. I picked this one to work on for Monogamous Mania because, believe it or not, this is my project with the smallest stitch count. It is very long, but it is also very narrow. So as far as stitch count goes, this is the smallest project I have. And I did manage to get some work done. I have almost completed this first page here. I just have to finish the green on this motif. So I got, you know, I think the last time you saw it, I had maybe just worked on the ship and maybe started these trunks. So I got, you know, the trunks done. I got this motif done down here and beaded. This motif is done entirely in this wool thread. The colors are really beautiful, but this thread is slightly thicker than the silks. And in hindsight, maybe 40 count was not the right call for this project because this wool thread is just a little bit too thick for 1/2 and 40 count. I should have maybe done 36, but that's okay. It's turning out really nice. It's just, the thread is a little thick and it breaks really easily. So it's a little bit slow going working with the wool. So this motif here took me forever. And I also had to frog a bunch. You can't really tell, but the trunks are off by like a half stitch or a full stitch too far to the left. So what I did is I left those instead of frogging them, and then I put the border in the right place and this motif in the right place so that everything else moving down would also be in the right place. So I semi-frogged and then redid this motif and the border, so it wasn't so bad. Yeah, so I have almost completed the first page of this, and I'm about 20% done this one as well. Theoretically, if I pulled this back out a few times this year, I think I could actually finish it because it is so narrow, but I don't know, it's a lot of brown and I'm really not feeling brown right now, so I don't know if it will come back out. It would be nice, like I said, it would be nice to finish this year because 150 years of Ellis Island, but I don't know. It's a lot of brown. And lastly, I have a new start to share with you. This is a wedding gift for a coworker, and I have decided to mash up 2 charts together. So this is, I don't have designer information for this chart, and I don't know what magazine it originally appeared in. This is a tear out from a magazine that I got in a giveaway. It's called, I think, the Old Kentucky Home Sampler, but I don't know who designed it, so I'm sorry. So I'm mashing up this chart with my big toe embrace moments. And my plan is I'm gonna stitch these flowers as charted in the box, and then over one inside the box, I am doing, let me see if I can find what I charted myself here and show you. For the crinkle, I charted some of the music notes and the lyrics from the song Their First Dance Is Going to Be Two is going to go in the box. And so I didn't really use this chart like per se, but I heavily drew inspiration from it, and I used like I didn't use these notes where they are placed, but I used the, what is that, like a treble clef there, and the bars. I don't know anything about music, so I don't have the technical terms. Sorry, Bart. I was so heavily inspired by this chart that I want to give it credit. Like, I used it as a template basically for my own charting, so I don't want to take credit for that. And I just have a small start on this. I'm using a scrap of 36 count Silvery Moon Belfast linen, and I started this flower in pink, this one right here, but I think I'm gonna do the large flowers in yellow and the small flowers in pink. I'm gonna swap them from what I originally intended. And I just pulled a selection of colors based on their wedding invitations. So I have Weeks Whiskey, I have a limited edition Teal Gentle Arts, I have a couple pinks from Weeks Dye Works, Cinnabar and Red Pear. Instead of black, I'm using Weeks Peacoat, which is like a very dark navy blue, and then Sandcastle, and the green is going to be Celadon by Weeks, which is a very pretty variegated green. So
I think it's going to turn out really beautifully, and I don't think it will take me too long. This chart is pretty small. It's, what is it? It doesn't say in the back, but it says like, oh, 63 by 63. So it's not that big, but we'll see how long it takes me to do the over one in the center. So that is it for whips.
So that's it for cross stitch whips. I do have one knitting whip I've been working on, which I will show it to you. I'm like halfway through a row here, so we'll try not to drop any stitches. That's the back. There we go. This is, what is this called? This is the cushion cover I've been slowly working on. Look how long it is. It's because it folds over. It's an envelope kind of fold style design, so it has to be long. I'm nearly done. This is the bird print cushion by West Yorkshire Spinners. It's a free pattern, and I'm knitting it using Aran yarn in their Country Birds collection in the blue tit colorway. And this has been, when I picked this up in February, I was really having a hard time with knitting, like just really, really struggling. I had been trying to learn to knit in the round and wasn't having any success. And I was like, oh man, maybe this is the hobby, not for me. This has been a really great refresher. It's a fantastic travel project. It's like pretty easy. I'm into a groove with it now. You know, it's just like stockinette stitch and then a couple rows of moss stitch in a specific order. And I think it's turning out really beautifully, and I love the striping. And it's gonna look beautiful in my living room. Another beautiful cushion cover that my husband will not be allowed to sit on. I am having a little bit of senioritis with it though. It's got 25 parts and I'm on part 20. So I'm very, very close to done. Like if I spend a couple, a week of evenings on this, just solidly churning it out, I could have it finished. But I'm just having some trouble getting the motivation to finish it up. I do tend to bring it with me on the subway when I have appointments and stuff that I'm going to without my daughter. And I do a little bit on the subway here and there, but I'm not working on it as much as I should have. I need to get my button gear and just finish it. I always get that way when I get like close to being done with a project. The last 10% of any crafting project takes me forever to finish. I don't know why. Anybody else? So that is it for knitting. Okay, so plans. What do I have planned? So this coming weekend, I'm going to the New Jersey Floss Tube Retreat. Oh, so excited. It was obviously canceled last year. In 2021, it was canceled. Or 2020, it was canceled, obviously. In 2021, it was canceled again. So this is the first year I will have gone since 2019, and I am super excited. My main goals for the year, if you'll remember, or if you didn't see my first video of the year, are to touch all of my whips. I have 20 active whips, 19 of which are large. They're all at least medium or large size. And so my goal for the year was not so much to finish as to just touch them all at least once. And I think that's going to be achievable. I have 9 remaining to touch for the year. And so my plan is to bring 5 of those to retreat. 6 of them to retreat, because somebody is hosting something at retreat where it's like start 6 new projects over a period of 6 hours. But they also said that if you didn't want to do new starts, you could bring whips. So I'm gonna bring 6 different projects to retreat and try and get an hour into each of them. So that'll knock out 6. And then I think I can touch the remaining 3 in the month of July, at least one night. Get at least 1 hour into all of them in the month of July. So my plan is to have touched everything in my whip pile by August 1st. And then after that, I'm going to go through and try and give each whip 2,022 stitches for 2022, which I think I don't know if I'll be able to do all of them in the next 5 months, I guess really 4.5 months. But I think I will be able to get 2,000 stitches into a lot of whips in the next 4 months. That will kind of like give me some motivation, because it'll be a big chunk of stitching that'll give me some motivation next year to come back to some things and finish them up. So that's my plan. They're kind of vague plans, but the next time I see you, I should have progress on at least 9 projects. So if you're just here for the crafting, that's it for crafting talk. I do have a little bit of book talk, but if that doesn't interest you, oops, you're falling down. If that doesn't interest you, I'll see you again next time. Okay, so books. I have read a lot of books. I mean, I'm mostly audiobook because that's just what fits my life right now. I have listened to a lot of books since I last saw you, so I'm just going to share the best ones. First up, nonfiction. I listened to Unorthodox by Deborah Feldman. This is a nonfiction memoir written by a woman who grew up in the ultra-conservative Hasidic Jewish community in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, and she later left it and, you know, kind of renounced the community, which is a big deal in those communities. Once you leave, you can't really go back. It was a really, I kind of expected it to be a book kind of just like trashing the Hasidic Jewish communities in Brooklyn and around the world, but it wasn't that. It was just like a really moving story, you know, like both a coming of age story about her growing up and just like a really moving portrait of this complicated relationship she has with like the fact that she really loved some of her family members, and, you know, she was a deeply religious person and still is in many ways. But as she was growing up, you know, this challenge of her finding her own voice and finding her own relationship with her faith in this very complicated and oppressive community, you know, like, it's just not like a black and white, like the community is terrible and she left. It's like a very real look at the complicated decision of breaking away from an oppressive religious group like that and the people you leave behind versus, you know, what she feels like she gained. And I don't know, I just really highly recommend it. It was a really beautiful read. The other nonfiction book I read that I really liked was Prairie Fires by Caroline Fraser. It's a long book, but it is the story of Laura Ingalls Wilder, who wrote, of course, the Little House on the Prairie series, which we're all very familiar with, and her daughter, Rose Lane, who helped co-author the series, which I didn't realize that they actually worked very closely together as a mother-daughter team to write all these books. And it's kind of the true story behind them. So, you know, Fraser explains, you know, like what parts of the book are true and what parts are actually fiction. And I didn't actually realize that a lot of this memoir, there are there's a lot of artistic license taken, not just in terms of sequence of events, but in things that happened. Fraser also kind of takes this book that a lot of us maybe feel like have like a nostalgic connection to, and kind of like explains and shows the historical context in which these events actually happened, and kind of like unwhitewashes them a little bit. You know, like, for example, in the Little House on the Prairie book, it's not really explained that the land that the Ingalls take over, they actually illegally were squatting on, and it was actually reservation land that the government had set aside for the Dakota tribes, and no white people were supposed to settle there. And there had been treaties and you know, laws made about this. And so they were actually forced to eventually leave when government soldiers came in and started clearing out white people from the lands because they were squatting illegally. And that's, you know, I haven't read that book in a long time, and that's not really said, or if it is said, it's like kind of glossed over. The other thing that Fraser kind of gives you some context for is that Rose Lane was actually a very loud voice and a very prominent libertarian, and she helped some of the first libertarian politicians rise to power. So when you kind of start understanding the political ideas behind her, and you kind of like put that with the books, like this idea of like, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, don't accept government help, the government shouldn't be helping anyone, you know, this fake American dream idea that we all know by now is not really true. When you put her libertarian ideas next to the literature, you kind of realize that this series is actually in some ways a bit of propaganda. Like, she encouraged her mother to write her memoirs down with a little bit of an intention of using it as political propaganda. It's very interesting. If you enjoy the Little House books, if you enjoy reading about like American pioneer historical fiction or nonfiction, really recommend this book. It's a long book, and you know, like a lot of biographies, there's a lot of detail, maybe could have used some editing, but it's a very interesting new perspective to a series that I enjoyed as a child, and kind of is giving me a new spin on it, like some added context. Okay, and then for fiction, I read and really liked The Final Girls Support Group. If you're a horror fan, you will like this book. So the concept is basically, you know how in most horror movies, there's like the final girl at the end, like the girl who kills the monster, the girl who survives. All her friends are dead, but she survives. That's like a trope, you know, especially in a lot of the 80s, 90s horror movies. So like imagine all these final girls end up in this like mental health support group together and get to know each other because they need help processing this over the years after these incidences. And then, so that's like kind of the concept of the characters. And then on top of that, somebody starts hunting down these final girls. And so there's, you know, like the crime, mystery, thriller aspect to it. If you're a horror fan, there's like a lot of callbacks to horror movies you probably recognize. It's, I think it's really good if you're into horror. It is definitely violent in the way that all those horror movies are. So if you're like not in the mood to read violent horror stuff, which I'm feeling more and more these days. I used to be really into true crime, and lately I'm just not feeling it. I like there's enough real life violence in the world, but it's a good book. It's really well written. I liked it. And if you're a horror fan, I think you will like it too. And then the other fiction book I read that I really liked was Miss Benson's Beetle, which is written by Rachel Joyce. This was a really good one to read after Final Girl Support Group, because Final Girl Support Group is so violent, and this one was very cheerful. It was cheerful and quirky and cozy, but also surprising. You know, it's essentially about Miss Benson, who is an elderly lady who's on this quest to find this specific beetle specimen on this distant island. It's set in like just kind of like post World War II, so I want to say like late 1940s, early 1950s UK, and she teams up with this very unlikely companion who is a young woman named Edith, and they are polar opposites in personality, which of course creates conflict. They end up kind of teamed up together by circumstance, and then you know, throughout the events of the book, the relationship evolves and they become close friends. And it's like really sweet and touching in a lot of ways. There are some parts that are really sad, some parts that are really charming, some parts that are so funny and hilarious. I didn't feel like anytime I was reading through it that I like knew what was going to happen next. You know, the plot The plot moves along really well and is surprising. I just really enjoyed it. It was a really, really nice read that left me feeling all the feels, but mostly happy. So Miss Benson's Beetle, really, really recommend it. And currently right now I am reading the Pillars of the Earth series. One of my coworkers highly recommended the series to me, and I don't know how I feel about it. I read the first book, so I'm probably gonna read all 4. I'm on the second one now, and there's sometimes I really like it, and then other times I'm like, there's not that there's like anything wrong with it. So it's a historical fiction set in like medieval times. The second book kind of takes place around the time of the bubonic plague, and it mostly centers around this monastery and then several different people and how all their lives are intertwined in relation to this specific town and monastery. And it's they're all long books, and the plot takes place over like a century of these people's lives, essentially. So there's some parts where it drags, and then there's the parts that are really good. And I mostly have been really enjoying the story and the storyline, but it is like, there are like a lot of sex scenes in it, which doesn't bother me, but they're like all sex scenes that are like, you know when you read something and like a sex scene and you're like, oh, a dude wrote this. Like a straight, cisgendered dude wrote this. Like there's like a lot of talk of like supple breasts, you know, swaying. And just like, it's just not like, the intimate parts are so like men writing women. Sometimes I'm like, okay, man. I guess it's not a bad thing, you know. That just kind of is like my main kind of complaint with the book, is that some of those parts I'm like, so I don't know yet if I recommend that, but that's the series I'm reading now. It's been around for a while, so you guys have probably all read it already, and I'm like just learning about it. So that's it for books. And that is everything I have to talk about in my notes, actually. So that's it for everything. I'm really excited for a treat this weekend, and hopefully, so I'm going back to work in August. We're flip-flopping again. My husband's gonna stay home with the kid. I'm going back to work. I am due in December, so I'm going to work as long as I physically am capable of, but hopefully I will have a chance in August to catch up with you guys and show you everything I've been working on. I think, I don't know. I was gonna say, oh, I'll have like more time while I'm commuting to work to like stitch and organize and like what I'm gonna say and stuff, but I said that last time and that didn't end up being the case. Life just, you know, life is life. Hopefully I will see you in August, and it won't be another one of those disappear for 5 months situations. I will definitely see you again before December. That is for sure, because after that, oh man. So that's it, that's everything. Thank you so much for spending a little bit of time with me today. I have been horrible about responding to comments and commenting on other people's videos, but I am here and I am watching. I am just not as engaged as I used to be because, you know, life, like we're all busy, right? But I hope you're all getting a little bit of time to stitch and craft. And if you're not getting any time to do that, or you just don't feel like it, because look, this is my big thing for the year, is that it's okay to rest. And so you don't have to be productive every second of the day. So if you don't feel like crafting, that's okay. And give yourself a break. Don't sweat the woodpile. Maybe just take a minute to scroll Instagram and enjoy everybody else's crafting. Nothing wrong with that. Maybe that's obvious to everyone else and not me. Something I'm working on. This is getting very rambly. Thank you so much for stopping in and spending a little bit of time with me, and I look forward to seeing you all again soon. Hope you're getting some crafting in. Take care.